Hey everyone, Emily Jashinsky, Culture Editor at the Federalist, here with staff writer at the Federalist, Tristan Justice. We're going to talk about Stacey Abrams right now because the DNC gave her a speaking slot at tonight's convention, which will certainly be boring. We can predict that. But Tristan, I want to ask, because you've done some reporting on this, you have a story up on the site today. Why on earth does the Democratic Party continue to embrace a figure like Stacey Abrams, whose record is really interesting?
Yeah, well, look, if last night was really any indication of what tonight would be like, tonight's DNC is going to be no more exciting. But Stacey Abrams is actually a lot more exciting than the lineup we'll see last night. Look, the story of Stacey Abrams really goes back to 2018. She narrowly lost the Georgia governor's race, but ever since then, she has refused to concede that it was a really free and fair election. And so the headline of my piece is The Arc of Stacey Abrams, because her story really is an arc. It starts with a lost gubernatorial race, and then we saw her profile elevate as one of the three major people in 2018 who did this bizarre thing and really failing upwards. We saw Beto O'Rourke in Texas. He lost a close Senate race out there. Then he ran for president. We saw Andrew Gillum in Florida, lost a governor's race there. He became an on-air contributor at CNN. Stacey Abrams, she lost an election. She never conceded that election. Paraded around the country, claiming to be the Georgia governor anyway, or at least the rightful one. And her profile was elevated by really exaggerated media hype. And so the media kind of comes at the top of this arc because there's really nothing substantive under it to provide Abrams as a really serious politician. She's never won a statewide office. She's never held an executive position in government. And she's never once served in a role where she had to deal with really complex foreign issues. But here she is this year launching her campaign to be vice president when there's nothing on her resume that qualifies for the top job. And now we're at the end of this arc where she wasn't even on the DNC speaker lineup until the last minute. She was put on over the weekend after the DNC was mocked for her absence. So it's really fascinating story. And she was also never really seriously considered for the VP slot. We now know that she didn't make the top four and that she wasn't even seriously vetted for the top job.
Yeah, so I was going to say, this is what I want to zero in on, because Stacey Abrams openly was campaigning to be the vice presidential nominee and to have Joe Biden add her to the ticket. What does that tell us about Stacey Abrams? Because I think it reflects the same sort of desperation for power that we've seen over the course of the last 2 years when it comes to Stacey Abrams trying to just promote herself relentlessly.
Well, I think you hit it right on the head. It's really this desperation for power, and it also just shows Stacey Abrams, just to be blunt, I mean, she's a sore loser. She even admitted that she does not have empirical evidence to show in 2018 that if her opponent was not the Secretary of State that year, that she would still come out on top. I mean, she admitted that she doesn't have the evidence to support that, but she is still parading the country, going on nationwide media tours, saying that she won anyway. Somehow that warrants her to be vice president. And the answer she gave over foreign policy was she had 25 years of independent study in foreign policy, but of course anybody can say that.
So why is anybody buying her spin? I think that's the mystery with Stacey Abrams, is what is it about her, even though her record is objectively it's objectively a political failure at this point. Why does she continue to keep failing upwards? What is it about the Democratic Party and the left that enables that?
I really think it's a strong indictment of the media, because I think what really gave Stacey Abrams her rise was her support with allies in the legacy media. And I mean, no politician, I think very few politicians in America, maybe the Obamas are an exception to this, but very few politicians in America have enjoyed the type of glowing media coverage, free marketing that Stacey Abrams has enjoyed. I mean, she had several appearances on The View. She went on CBS, and Gayle King just flat out said, "Everyone knows you're extremely qualified to be president." She had several major profiles. I mean, the Washington Post literally published a 6,000-word glowing profile of Stacey Abrams headlined "The Power of Stacey Abrams," where they introduced her as a Marvel Comics superhero.
They have that famous picture of her, right?
Exactly. She was silhouetted. She was a silhouette figure with a cape behind her, and it looked like they had a floodlight behind her to give her like this aura of holiness. So I really think that the fascination with Abrams on the Democratic Party, it's really an indictment from on the media and how it covered her, despite no substance behind her.
Well, let's drill down on this. What is it about her that allows them to elevate, or that makes them want to elevate her despite the failures in her record, despite the fact that objectively her open campaigning for that vice presidential slot was embarrassing from a professional standpoint? It was just beclowning herself. It looked so silly. She lost the election and continued to insist, despite the facts otherwise, and despite her recognition that she didn't have the empirical evidence to support her. She went on a tour basically claiming she was the rightful governor of Georgia. This is embarrassing, and we can even talk about her history as a romance novelist, but we don't even need to get into that right now because we don't even need to get into that right now in terms of her political record, though, because she has over the past couple of years, I think, embarrassed herself. So why? What is it about Stacey Abrams that makes Democrats elevate her despite the problems with her record?
I mean, Abrams, had she won that governor's race, I think she would have been the first Black woman governor in the country. And I mean, that would have been a monumental success. And that she developed some star power during that race. But again, and it's just this fascination of the media with candidates like that. And ever since she decried the election, the media just began to elevate her. So again, I think it really just ties back to the media here in their fascination with elevating lost candidates, especially on the Democratic side. And it's a bizarre phenomenon how very few Republicans seem to lose elections and then go on to run for president or even run for vice president, because no one runs for vice president anyway until they're actually tapped.
Right, and we'd have to even drill down into the media fascination with Stacey Abrams and failed Democratic candidates in general. But I think with Stacey Abrams, what it is that she brings to the table a Black woman from the South who is able to speak about progressive policies in a fairly accessible way. I think they think she's charismatic, but their idea of her as this likable, charismatic, progressive persona, I think, says about how little they understand in terms of what the American people or the voting public finds to be appealing or accessible in a candidate, or finds to be charismatic in a candidate.
I think we have this tendency in American politics, and all of this is a symptom of how just the media works, and how we tend to glorify politicians as these kind of celebrities. And so the media, we really, in the Democratic Party, really made Stacey Abrams a celebrity in her loss, because she was this Black woman on the rise, especially when we had these kind of cultural civil wars simmering under the surface, where everything in today's world is about race. She was really on the rise, and again, had she won that election, it would have been a monumental first. And I think even though she lost, the media still sought to make her this celebrity that she is today, even though it's embarrassing. I mean, she's still on the lineup tonight.
Right. So why don't we go to the romance novels just to wrap things together, because you're talking like you continue to point to the media, and I think that's right. But this is an really interesting case study in that actually I think I'm probably one of the only people to have read just about all of Stacey Abrams' romance novels, which are graphic romance novels. A couple of years ago, I excerpted some of the steamiest sex scenes from Stacey Abrams' romance novels. But at the time, and this was really soon, I mean, this might have actually even been the day of her election that story was published. At the time, it had gotten so little attention from the mainstream media, and the attention that it had gotten, the fact that this candidate with huge endorsements from major Democrats, who was being, lauded by the media, paraded across the media as the future of the Democratic Party, had these absolutely hilarious, extremely sexually graphic romance novels. There's like 10 of them. The media either treated them as sort of an amusing or brave footnote, or they just didn't talk about them at all. But Tristan, don't you think that if it had been a Republican candidate, a female Republican candidate with that past of having authored all of these sexually graphic romance novels, the media would have treated this much differently?
Oh, there's absolutely double standard. I think it also has to do with, I still think the culture in both parties is different, where the Democratic Party has traditionally been more receptive of things like pornography, and those romance novels probably fall into that category. But there's still absolutely, I, I liked your piece on, everyone should go read your piece on it, the excerpts from Stacey Abrams' hilarious romance novels. But no, I mean, I think the Democratic Party has just traditionally been more receptive of vulgar content. And I still think, however, that a double standard exists where, because that's a blanket generalization. I think it's true, but it's still a blanket generalization. I think if a Republican who was not so opposed to vulgar content in our media had written romance novels, they'd be vilified and outcast in the media as kind of a fringe candidate. But like you said, Stacey Abrams is this future of the Democratic Party.
Well, no, I think you raise a good point that typically if you're a Republican candidate, you are in some way supportive of traditional values. But I think you can even extrapolate this to a Republican candidate who is, in favor, like a cultural leftist, basically, and sort of a fiscal Republican. I think the media would be all over this story. It would have been, treated as an embarrassment. Or there at least would have been so much more attention on it, but there's barely been any reporting on the fact that she has this. I'm trying to. Oh, her pen name is Selena Montgomery. It's fabulous.
No, I think you're absolutely right, and that Stacey Abrams, she would be like an anomaly in the Republican Party, but she would be, again, vilified, and you would never hear the end of it. And now when we do hear about I almost said Selena Montgomery. But I guess that's true too. And now, every time we hear about Selena Montgomery, it's almost like a courageous thing. Like she wrote romance novels, and she's in politics. It's what?
It's feminist, right? And she's like a Renaissance woman.
Yeah, it's progressive.
Right. Well, Tristan, thank you so much. I recommend everybody give Tristan a follow. What's your Twitter handle, Tristan?
It's Justice Tristan, JusticeTristan.
Justice Tristan, you can check out his story on Stacey Abrams that's up on the Federalist website today. Thank you so much, and subscribe for more.
Thanks, Emily.